Imagine the perfect day, sunlight streaming, vows exchanged, a future unwritten. But what if that perfect beginning was merely the curtain rising on a performance of deceit, passion, and ultimate betrayal? What if the vows whispered were not of eternal love, but of a sinister pact, concealed beneath layers of family ambition and hidden desire? Today, we unravel a chilling tale where the sanctity of marriage was shattered not by a moment of weakness, but by a carefully constructed web of lies years in the making. This is the story of a wedding night that ended in murder, a family torn apart by secrets, and a detective's relentless pursuit of a truth darker than anyone could have imagined. By the way, before we get started, if stories of unsolved crimes, baffling evidence, and the relentless pursuit of justice intrigue you, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button if you want to see more deep dives into the unknown. Subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode of Unsolved Riddles. And please, share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know what country you are watching this from. We would love to tell more crime stories from your area. Now let us get to it. The Grand Burbank Hotel, May 25, 2025. 200 elegantly dressed guests gathered under a sky painted in the golden hues of a setting sun. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the hushed murmurs of anticipation. This was more than a wedding. It was a strategic alliance. Tavon Brooks, a name synonymous with innovation and ambition at just 27, stood at the altar. His cyber security startup had recently soared to an $80 million valuation, earning him a coveted spot on Forbes' 30 Under 30 list. Today, however, the usual analytical focus in his eyes was replaced by a boundless, almost boyish happiness. In the front row, Obadiah Brooks, Tavon's father, cut a distinguished figure. A widower for 15 years, he had meticulously transformed a modest construction company into the formidable Burbank real estate empire. At 48, his silver-flecked temples only added to his aura of quiet authority. He watched his son, a subtle tension in his jaw. Then, the music shifted. A grand orchestral swell, and all eyes turned. Zenaia Whitley appeared, gliding down the aisle in a gown that seemed spun from moonlight and dreams. At 25, she was an architectural prodigy, her recent eco-friendly complex in Burbank clinching a national award. Whispers followed her, some attributing her rapid ascent to the Brooks family's pervasive influence. Yet, none could deny her striking beauty. Tall, with flawless dark amber skin and eyes that sparkled with intelligence, Zaniah moved with an innate grace. Her designer gown clung to her form, and pearls woven into her intricate hairstyle crowned her like a queen. As Zaniah reached the altar, Tavon took her hand. For a fleeting moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Their vows, his voice a steady promise, hers a melodic whisper, filled the courtyard. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, a roar of applause erupted, punctuated by a cascade of celebratory fireworks. At the opulent reception, Obadiah Brooks delivered a poignant toast. To my son and his beautiful bride, he began, his voice resonating with paternal pride. You are both the most precious things in my life. In that moment, almost imperceptibly, over the clink of champagne flutes, Obadiah and Zaniah's eyes met. A flicker passed between them, a silent communication that spoke of something far deeper and far more unsettling than mere family affection. The celebration continued into the late hours, a whirlwind of dancing, congratulations, and slices of a towering 6-tier cake. The photographer, a diligent observer of joy, captured every fleeting smile, every shared glance, convinced he was documenting an endless happiness. Around midnight, under a gentle shower of rice and rose petals, the newlyweds departed for the hotel's presidential suite, a 2-story haven with panoramic views of Burbank's glittering cityscape. Mrs. Brooks, Tavon whispered as the elevator doors closed, their sanctuary finally embracing them. It sounds strange, but I like it, Zaniah replied, pressing herself against his chest, a soft smile on her lips. So what now, Mr. Brooks? She teased. Now, he echoed, his voice thick with expectation. Now we have our whole lives ahead of us. Inside the suite, Chilled champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries, and a bed strewn with rose petals awaited them. Tavon closed the door, sealing them off from the world outside, from the lingering eyes and the unspoken truths. 8 in the morning. Letitia James, a seasoned hotel maid, knocked softly on the presidential suite door. No answer. She waited, then knocked again, louder this time. Still, only silence. The newlyweds had requested an early breakfast and housekeeping, and Letitia was diligent. Using her keycard, she let herself in. The living room was pristine, untouched. The champagne bottle remained unopened, the strawberries uneaten. A frown creased Letitia's brow. "Good morning, room service," she called out, her voice echoing in the stillness. No reply. She ascended to the second floor, where the bedroom was located. The door was ajar. Letitia's scream tore through the quiet luxury of the suite. 40 minutes later, Detective Ezra Delano arrived. A tall 41-year-old man, his closely cropped hair and piercing eyes exuded an unwavering confidence. His black suit, impeccable despite the early hour and the urgency, spoke of a man always prepared. "What do we have here?" he asked, flashing his badge to the young officer guarding the suite entrance. Zenaia Whitley Brooks, 25 years old, found dead this morning by the maid. "Presumed suicide," the officer recited, glancing at his notebook. Delano nodded, stepping into the room. Upstairs, medical examiner Zenaia Delano awaited him, his late brother's ex-wife. Their shared past was acknowledged but never discussed. Their relationship remained strictly professional. "Ezra," she greeted, a slender woman of 38, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, her white coat a stark contrast to the unfolding tragedy. Nia always radiated a quiet calm, even amidst the most horrific scenes. "Nia, what do you think?" Delano asked. "At first glance, it looks like an overdose," she replied. An empty sleeping pill bottle and a half-empty glass of wine were found next to the body. No signs of decomposition, so death occurred between 1 and 3 a.m., I would guess. Delano surveyed the room. Zaniah lay on the bed, still in her exquisite wedding dress. Her eyes were closed, a faint, almost serene smile playing on her lips, as if she had drifted off with happy thoughts. But Delano had seen enough death to know how deceiving such tranquility could be. "Where's the husband?" he asked, pulling on latex gloves. "In the next room. He was found in the hallway early this morning, heavily intoxicated. Claims he doesn't remember anything after midnight." Delano raised an eyebrow. Convenient amnesia. He began his meticulous examination, his movements precise, his gaze missing nothing. Something felt wrong, a subtle discord that resonated deep within his gut. Zaniah's phone lay on the bedside table unlocked. The last message, time stamped 12:30 am, read, "Everything went perfectly. Can't wait to see you tomorrow." "Oh, who's that?" Delano muttered, his mind already connecting the dots. He continued his scrutiny, noticing several unsettling details. Zaniah's hands were folded too neatly for someone succumbing to an overdose. More disturbingly, almost hidden by the high collar of her dress, were faint bruises on her neck, possibly finger marks. "Nia, look here," he urged, pointing. Nia leaned in, carefully pulling back the collar. Her brow furrowed. "This changes things. We need a full autopsy. These marks look like strangulation." Delano nodded. Suicide is looking less and less likely. He then noticed another crucial detail. The nail on Zaniah's right index finger was broken, as if she had struggled, perhaps clawing at something. Dark traces lingered beneath the nail. "We need samples from under the nails," he instructed. "Already done," Nia confirmed. "Results will be in later today." Delano knelt, examining the floor around the bed. In a corner, partially concealed by a heavy curtain, he spotted a tiny scrap of fabric, the same shade of ivory as Tavon's suit. "Interesting," he murmured, carefully placing it in an evidence bag. His examination of the crime scene complete, Delano proceeded to the room where Tavon Brooks was being held. The young man sat slumped on the edge of the bed, his eyes red, rimmed and swollen from crying. His once immaculate suit was rumpled, a dark stain on his sleeve, possibly wine. "Mr. Brooks, I'm Detective Ezra Delano. I'm very sorry for your loss, but I need to ask you a few questions." Tavon looked up, genuine grief etched on his face. I don't understand what happened. We were so happy. Why did she do it? We're not sure yet if it was suicide, Mr. Brooks. Could you tell me what happened last night after you left the wedding reception? Tavon ran a hand over his face. We went up to our room around midnight. We were so happy. We opened the champagne and started, well, it was our wedding night. And then I don't remember. I must have had too much to drink at the reception. The last thing I remember is us toasting to our future, and then nothing. I woke up in the hallway with a security guard shaking me by the shoulder, and then they told me that Zaniah. His voice broke, dissolving into renewed tears. Delano watched him closely. The grief seemed authentic, yet something in his account did not quite align. How did he end up in the hallway? Why the sudden, convenient memory blank after midnight? Mr. Brooks, did your wife have any enemies? Perhaps problems at work or in her personal life? Tavon shook his head. No, everyone loved Zaniah. She was a ray of sunshine, talented, ambitious, but kind. I can't imagine anyone wanting to hurt her. What about you? Do you have any enemies? I work in cybersecurity, detective. Of course. There are people who aren't thrilled about my job, but what does that have to do with anything? Zaniah killed herself. Delano noted the subtle shift in Tavon's tone on his final words, as if he were trying to convince himself as much as the detective. We're looking into all possibilities, Mr. Brooks. One more question. Do you know anyone whose name starts with O, whom your wife might have been in contact with? Tavon frowned. No, I can't think of anyone. Why do you ask? Just checking the details. Thank you for your time, Mr. Brooks. Please don't leave town anytime soon. We may have more questions. As Delano left the room, he encountered Obadiah Brooks. Tavon's father looked utterly exhausted, but he still carried himself with a wary dignity. Detective, I'm Obadiah Brooks, Tavon's father. Is there any news? Is my son? Is he okay? Oh, Mr. Brooks, your son is in shock, but he is physically unharmed. We are investigating the circumstances surrounding his wife's death. This is a terrible tragedy. Zaniah was special. I don't understand why she would do such a thing. Delano observed Obadiah intently. Mr. Brooks, did you know your daughter-in-law well? A flicker of something anxiety, perhaps fear, crossed Obadiah's eyes, then vanished as quickly as it appeared. Of course. Detective Zaniah worked on projects for my company. She was a talented architect and would have been a wonderful addition to our family. Delano noticed how Obadiah nervously adjusted his tie, his fingers trembling slightly. Mr. Brooks, where were you between 1 and 3 a.m. today? Obadiah straightened up. I left the reception around 11 in the evening and returned home. I live alone, so there are no witnesses, but the security guard at my complex can confirm the time of my return. I see. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. We will keep you informed of the investigation. As Obadiah departed, Delano pulled out his phone. I need information on all calls and messages from Zenaia Whitley Brooks's phone for the last month, and please check if there have been any contacts between her and Obadiah Brooks other than work meetings. Something in his gut screamed that the letter O in Zanaia's last message was not a coincidence. If his hunch was correct, the happy wedding might have been hiding much darker secrets than anyone could ever have imagined. Rain drummed against the morgue roof, a somber rhythm accompanying the coroner's work. Nia Delano completed the final stitch on Zenaia Whitley Brooks's body, her movements precise, almost ritualistic, as she removed her blood-stained gloves. Ezra Delano stood against the wall, his face a mask of impassivity, though internally he grappled with the grim reality. Even after years on the force, the sight of young women on the autopsy table never ceased to disturb him. Well, he asked, as Nia walked to the sink to scrub her hands. It's definitely not suicide, she replied, carefully lathering her fingers. The cause of death is asphyxiation due to strangulation. There are clear finger marks on the neck, consistent with a male hand. Sleeping pills were found in the blood, but not in a concentration high enough to cause death. Delano nodded. So, Someone strangled her and tried to make it look like an overdose. Exactly. And there's something else. Nia approached the microscope. We found fabric fibers and skin particles under her fingernails. We're still analyzing the DNA, but the fibers are identical to the material of Tavon Brooks's suit. She fought back. Delano observed thoughtfully. Yes, and quite desperately. There are bruises on the inside of her wrists. She was held down with her arms pinned to the bed. Judging by the location of the bruises, the attacker was taller and stronger than the victim. The detective looked at Zaniah's body. Even in death, she retained a strange, unsettling beauty. Time of death, between 19:30 and 20:15 a.m., no earlier, no later. Any signs of sexual contact? Nia shook her head. None. If they were planning a wedding night, they didn't get that far. Delano rubbed his chin, contemplating. So, the newlyweds go up to their room around midnight. Less than 2 hours later, the bride is dead, and the groom is found drunk in the hallway, remembering nothing. Too convenient, don't you think? We can't arrest someone for too convenient, Ezra, Nia responded with a stern look. We need evidence, and we'll find it. Delano headed for the exit. Thanks, Nia. Keep me posted on the DNA results. Back at the police station, Delano immersed himself in Zenaia Whitley's past. Photos, social media printouts, resumes, articles about her architectural triumphs. They lay spread across his desk. Zaniah, a rising star, had grown up in Compton. Her parents a bus driver and a school teacher. Excellent grades led to a scholarship at UCLA, graduating with honors in architecture. Then, her meteoric rise began. 3 years ago, she joined Brooks Development as a junior architect and almost immediately found herself on large, high-profile projects. Within a year, she was leading her own team, her designs earning prestigious awards. This was too fast for a novice architect without connections. Unless she had a very influential patron, Delano muttered, his gaze settling on a photo of Zaniah and Obadiah Brooks at the opening of a new eco-complex. They stood close, his arm casually around her waist. For an employer-employee relationship, it appeared a little too intimate. Delano dialed Judge Holloway, his weekend basketball buddy. James, I need a warrant for the financial transactions of Obadiah Brooks and Zenaia Whitley for the last 3 years. And their phone records, too. The warrant arrived within an hour, and Delano plunged into a world of numbers and dates. Within 30 minutes, he found his first significant lead monthly transfers from Obadiah's account to Zaniah's, commencing immediately after she was hired. The amounts were substantial, 10 times her official salary. I wonder what services she was receiving in exchange for this money, Delano noted in his book. The phone records were even more damning, hundreds of messages and calls between them, often late at night or on weekends. Over the past year, the frequency of their contact had only escalated. Delano leaned back, rubbing his tired eyes. A picture was beginning to emerge. A stark contrast to the idyllic family portrait the Brooks had carefully curated. The next step was a visit to the architectural firm where Zaniah had worked. The modern glass and concrete edifice soared above its neighbors, a monument to Burbank's largest developer. In the spacious lobby, Delano was met by a secretary with tear-stained eyes. The news of Zaniah's death had already permeated the office. Detective Delano, Burbank Police, he stated, showing his badge. I need to speak with Zenaia Whitley's colleagues. He was led to a conference room where 5 people, Zaniah's closest colleagues, had gathered. All looked devastated, but Delano noticed one woman, short and bespectacled, who seemed more annoyed than genuinely saddened. Liana Jones, senior designer. She introduced herself when Delano addressed her. I worked with Zaniah for the last 2 years. What was she like as a colleague? The detective asked. Liana pursed her lips. Officially, talented and hardworking. And unofficially, look, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but she lowered her voice. Zaniah didn't get projects and promotions because of her talent. She had special access to management. You mean Obadiah Brooks? Liana nodded. Everyone knew they were in a relationship. They tried to hide it, but unsuccessfully. Private meetings, business trips together, his arm around her waist at company parties. And suddenly, Zaniah's projects were given the green light while more experienced architects were left out in the cold. And how long had this been going on? From the very beginning. She came here 3 years ago, and within a month, rumors were already circulating. And then she started dating Tavon, and everyone thought, what a twist. First the father, then the son. Delano wrote the information down. Did Tavon know about his father's relationship with Zaniah? If he did, he didn't show it. But Zaniah, she was a manipulator. She used people to get what she wanted. First, Obadiah helped her with her career. Then she switched to Tavon, a young, successful tech genius with millions in the bank. And Obadiah didn't object. Liana shrugged. Who knows what was going on in their heads? Maybe it was some kind of twisted power game. All I know is that Zaniah got everything she wanted using her charm. After interviewing the other colleagues, who largely corroborated Lina's story, Delano pursued another lead. Phone records indicated that Obadiah and Zaniah frequently met at the Azure Hotel on the outskirts of Burbank. The hotel manager, initially uncooperative, quickly changed his tune upon seeing the warrant. He confirmed that Mr. Brooks regularly booked a suite on the top floor under the name Smith, and always arrived with his niece, a young black woman matching Zaniah's description. The last time they were here, let me think, 3 days ago, the day before the wedding, the manager said, scanning his records. Did they seem tense? Delano asked. No, on the contrary, very close, if you know what I mean. Delano understood. The picture was becoming increasingly grim. Back at the station, a message from the tech department awaited him. They had managed to recover deleted messages from Zaniah's phone. Most were from Obadiah, signed simply with the letter O. The content ranged from business discussions to openly intimate confessions. The last message was sent at 12:30 a.m. On the night of the murder. Everything went perfectly. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Oh, Zaniah's reply was chilling me, too. We need to be careful at first. T doesn't suspect anything. Soon we'll be able to be together openly. I love you, Z. Delano swore under his breath. It seemed Zaniah had planned to continue her affair with Obadiah, even after marrying his son. This provided Tavon with a powerful motive for murder, if he had discovered the betrayal. But how and when exactly? The answer came unexpectedly. Jermaine Parker, the wedding photographer, arrived at the station with information he considered crucial. I was looking through the photos for the wedding album and noticed something strange. Jermaine opened his laptop. Around 11 at night, Tavon went to the bar and Zaniah was talking to his father. The photos showed Obadiah leaning towards Zaniah, his hand briefly touching her waist. Their faces were close, too close for a father of the groom and his daughter-in-law. And here, Jermaine clicked to the next photo. Tavon comes back and sees them. Look at his face. Delano examined the image. Tavon's expression was a complex tableau of shock, disbelief, and a simmering rage. After that, he and Zaniah walked off toward the garden. I didn't follow them. They asked for some privacy. But when they came back about 15 minutes later, the atmosphere between them had changed. They were smiling and holding hands, but it looked forced, like they were acting. What about Obadiah? He was watching them from a distance. He looked concerned. Delano meticulously studied all the photos. In one, Tavon was holding Zaniah's phone. Perhaps that was when he saw the messages from his father. Thank you, Mr. Parker. You've been very helpful to the investigation. After the photographer left, Delano called in technicians to check Tavon's phone. The results came back quickly. At 5:25 a.m., 5 minutes before Obadiah's last message, Tavon's phone had accessed Zaniah's messenger account. He knew, Delano muttered. He read their messages right before they went up to the room. Now, one more detail remained. Delano returned to the Grand Burbank Hotel and requested surveillance camera footage. The video from the first floor showed Tavon and Zaniah entering the elevator around midnight, both smiling and holding hands. But as soon as the doors closed, Tavon's smile vanished, replaced by an icy, hardened gaze. A camera in the hallway on the presidential suite floor captured Tavon leaving the room at 20:15 a.m. His suit was rumpled, a dark stain visible on his sleeve. He walked unsteadily, as if drunk, then leaned against the wall and slowly slid to the floor. A security guard found him 20 minutes later and helped him up. Tavon mumbled something, and the guard took him to the next room. A classic setup. Delano shook his head. He's pretending to be really drunk to explain his memory loss. And that dark stain on his sleeve looks like blood, not wine. Back at the station, the detective received the final DNA analysis results. The skin particles under Zaniah's fingernails belonged to Tavon Brooks, as did the fabric fibers. The case was taking shape. Delano gathered his team. "So, here's what we have," he began, pointing to a whiteboard covered with evidence. Zenaia Whitley was in a romantic relationship with Obadiah Brooks for at least 3 years. During that time, she received significant career advancement and financial support. Then she started dating Tavon, Obadiah's son, possibly hoping for even greater benefits, or trying to cover up her relationship with his father. Obadiah didn't mind, asked one of the detectives. Judging by the messages, he was fine with the plan. Maybe they were thinking of getting together officially after Zaniah and Tavon got divorced at some convenient time. And Tavon didn't suspect anything. Not until the wedding. But that evening, he noticed something between his father and his bride, then checked her phone and discovered their correspondence. Imagine that. You've just gotten married, and then you find out that your wife and your father. The motive is obvious, but why didn't he confront them right away? Delano thought for a moment. Maybe he wanted to save face in front of the guests, or he was too shocked. In any case, he waited until they were alone, and then he exploded, finished Nia, who had just entered the room. "I brought the final autopsy results. The strangulation occurred in a state of intense emotional arousal. The marks on the neck are deep, with tissue damage characteristic of a fit of rage." Delano nodded. He killed her in a fit of rage, then tried to stage a suicide with sleeping pills and wine. After that, he pretended to be heavily intoxicated to explain his memory loss. "Sounds plausible," said Lieutenant Harris, who had been observing the discussion. "Enough for an arrest." "Almost. We need to check one more detail," Delano replied. That evening, he met with the bartender from the wedding, who confirmed that Tavon had hardly consumed any alcohol. At most, 2 glasses of champagne throughout the entire evening. This completely refuted the story of heavy intoxication. The next morning, Delano received the results of Tavon's blood toxicology test. No signs of severe intoxication, only a small amount of alcohol, equivalent to 1 or 2 glasses of champagne. The picture of the crime was complete. Tavon Brooks, upon learning of his wife and father's betrayal on his wedding day, killed Zaniah in a fit of rage and then attempted to stage a suicide. Delano prepared an arrest warrant, but before doing so, he decided to speak with Obadiah Brooks one last time. He found him at the Brooks Development Office. "Mr. Brooks, I need to ask you a few questions about your relationship with Zenaia Whitley." Obadiah looked utterly depleted. "I don't understand what you're talking about." "I think you do. We have evidence of your connection messages, financial transactions, witness statements. You even met with her the day before her wedding to your son." Obadiah remained silent for a long time, then sighed heavily. "Yes, we loved each other. It started as a fling, but it grew into something more. I know it sounds awful. What about her relationship with your son?" "It was a strategy. Zaniah was afraid for her reputation if our relationship became public. The age difference, her career. By dating Tavon, she could stay in my life without raising any suspicions. The plan was that in a year or 2, they would divorce by mutual consent, and then, after a decent amount of time had passed, Zaniah and I could be together openly. And Tavon didn't know about this. No. God, no. He loved her sincerely. I'm not proud of it, detective, but I didn't kill Zaniah. I swear." "I know," Delano replied calmly. "Your son killed her." Obadiah turned pale. What? No. That's impossible. Tavon isn't capable of. I found out about your relationship on their wedding day. He saw you together, checked her phone, and then when they were alone, Obadiah covered his face with his hands. Oh God, it's my fault. I ruined my own son's life. Mr. Brooks, we'll need your official statement and possibly your testimony in court. Leaving Obadiah's office, Delano headed for the police car where Nia was waiting. How did it go? She asked. He confirmed the affair, and he seems genuinely shocked that his son could have killed Zaniah. You don't think he suspected anything? People tend not to see what destroys their worldview. Even smart people like Obadiah Brooks. Delano started the car. Let's go arrest the killer. Tavon Brooks was in his apartment, hastily packing his belongings. An open laptop displayed flight information to South America. Tavon Brooks. You're under arrest for the murder of Zenaia Whitley Brooks. Delano read him his rights as an officer cuffed him. I don't understand what you're talking about. Tavon remained outwardly calm, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. My wife killed herself. No, Mr. Brooks. You strangled her after learning about her affair with your father. For a split second, Tavon's mask of composure shattered, and such raw rage flashed in his eyes that Delano instinctively reached for his holster. You won't prove anything, Tavon hissed, his voice laced with venom. We already have DNA under the victim's fingernails, fibers from your suit, surveillance camera footage, toxicology reports refuting your claim of intoxication, and your father's confession about his affair with Zaniah. Tavon spun around. He confessed. That traitor his own son? Mr. Brooks. Anything you say can be used against you in court. But Tavon had already lost control. Do you know how I felt seeing them together, reading those messages? 3 years. 3 years they were seeing each other behind my back, planning how to use me and throw me away. She swore she loved me, stood at the altar. And then, his voice broke, tears of rage welling in his eyes. I didn't want to kill her. I just wanted the truth. But when we went up to the room, she started lying, writhing like a snake. And then she confessed and said that I was just a stepping stone for her and her father, that I'd never be as successful as him, that I... Delano nodded to the officers, and they led Tavon towards the exit. The confession had been obtained. In the car on the way to the station, Delano pondered how quickly love could curdle into hate, and how those closest to us were capable of inflicting the most profound pain. Tavon Brooks, Obadiah Brooks, and Zenaia Whitley. All three had become casualties of their own ambitions, their passions, and their deceit. It was still raining when they arrived at the station. Tavon was taken to a cell, and Delano began to fill out his reports. The case was solved, but the weight of the tragedy lingered. The Brooks family had been irrevocably shattered, and no amount of justice could mend what had been broken. The bright California sun flooded Obadiah Brooks's office when Ezra Delano walked in. The Crystal Awards for Architectural Achievement glittered on a shelf behind a massive mahogany desk. Obadiah sat by the window, gazing out at the panoramic view of Burbank, his silhouette sharply defined against the dazzling light. Detective, he turned, and Delano noticed the dark circles under his eyes. I assume you have new questions, Mr. Brooks. Delano began, taking a seat opposite him. We need to talk about your relationship with Zenaia Whitley. Obadiah was silent for a long time, staring at his hands. Finally, he took a deep breath. I met her 3 years ago at an architecture exhibition. She was talented, ambitious, charming. At first, we had only a business relationship. I saw her designs and offered her a job at my company, but gradually everything changed. When exactly did your affair begin? Delano asked, pulling out his notebook. 2 months after she started working for me. We both had a few too many drinks at a company party, and that's how it started. I know how it looks. A rich boss and a young employee. It's cliché to the point of being disgusting, Obadiah said with a bitter smile. But there was something more between us. Zaniah understood me like no one else. After my wife died, I was alone for 15 years, devoting myself entirely to my business and my son. With her, I felt alive again. What about her relationship with your son? Obadiah's face contorted. It happened about a year ago. Tavon met Zaniah at a corporate event and was smitten. I should have stopped it right from the start, but Zaniah convinced me that it would be safer for us. People were starting to notice our closeness, and if she was dating Tavon, it would have diverted suspicion. And you agreed. I was weak. Obadiah clenched his fists. I was too afraid of losing her. Zaniah assured me that her feelings for Tavon weren't real, that it was just a cover. We planned that in a year or two they would break up amicably, and then, after waiting a decent amount of time, we could be together openly. What about the wedding? Wasn't that part of your plan? Obadiah shook his head. No, it was Tavon's idea. He proposed so suddenly. Zaniah panicked and agreed, fearing that refusing would arouse suspicion. We agreed to get through the wedding and then proceed with the plan. And you really believed that your son wouldn't get hurt? Delano's voice was tinged with judgment. I convinced myself that it would be better for everyone. That Tavon was young, he would get over the breakup. I lied to myself. Well, Mr. Brooks, do you suspect that your son could have killed Zaniah? No. Obadiah straightened up abruptly. Tavon isn't capable of murder. He's never been aggressive. Even as a child, he's a rational, well-adjusted person, even if he found out about your betrayal. Obadiah fell silent, considering the question. I don't know. A shock like that could change anyone. When was the last time you spoke to Zaniah before she died? I sent her a message around midnight, after she and Tavon left the reception. Just said everything went well, and that we'd see each other the next day as planned. And she replied, yes. She said she was looking forward to seeing me, and that Tavon didn't suspect anything. Delano made a note. Mr. Brooks, you admit to having a romantic relationship with Zenaia Whitley, but you deny any involvement in her murder. Yes, I swear I didn't hurt her. I loved her. Obadiah's voice faltered. Thank you for your honesty. We may need your official statement. Leaving Obadiah's office, Delano felt convinced he was telling the truth, at least about his involvement in the murder. Now everything pointed to Tavon. Returning to the station, the detective found Naya in his office. She looked agitated. I found something interesting, she said, handing him a folder with the lab results. Under Zaniah's fingernails, we found not just fabric fibers, but a very specific material, merino wool mixed with silk, and a certain type of dye. And what does that mean? It's a rare material, used only by a few elite tailors. Tavon Brooks's wedding suit was made from this very fabric. It was a special order from designer Antoine Loy. Delano whistled. A direct clue. We can work with that. And one more detail. Nia opened the folder to another page. Analysis of the victim's stomach contents showed the presence of a sleeping pill mixed with wine, but there's a discrepancy. The concentration in the stomach is higher than in the blood. So, she was drugged after she died. Exactly. The sleeping pill was put in the victim's mouth after she died to make it look like suicide. Delano leaned back in his chair, mentally piecing together the chronology of events. Tavon somehow finds out about his wife's affair with his father, strangles her in a fit of rage, and then cold-bloodedly stages a suicide. It looks like it, Nia nodded. But we need a complete reconstruction of events for the trial. Delano spent the next few hours analyzing all the evidence he had gathered. He laid out crime scene photos, forensic reports, and printouts of the messages. Gradually, a clear picture of what had happened formed in his mind. Gather the team, he told Nia. I'm ready to present my reconstruction of events. All the detectives working on the case gathered in the conference room, along with the Burbank District Attorney. Delano stood in front of a screen displaying a timeline. So, here's what happened on the night of May 26th, he began. Around 11 p.m. at the wedding reception, Tavon notices some strange interaction between his new wife and his father. This arouses his suspicion. Delano showed a photo taken by the wedding photographer, the moment when Tavon sees his father and wife in close proximity. At around 11:15 p.m., Tavon takes Zaniah into the garden for a private conversation. Witnesses describe their return as tense, although they tried to appear happy on the surface. At midnight, the newlyweds said goodbye to their guests and went up to the presidential suite. Cameras in the elevator show that as soon as the doors closed, a Tavon smile disappeared. At 12:30 a.m., Obadiah sent Zaniah a message: "Everything went perfectly. Can't wait to see you tomorrow." At that moment, according to phone records, Tavon already had access to his wife's Messenger account. He sees the message and probably looks through previous correspondence, revealing their long-term affair. Delano paused, allowing the information to sink in. What happens next we can only reconstruct based on the evidence. Tavon confronts Zaniah. She either denies everything or confesses. We don't know for sure. But the conversation escalates into a heated argument. At some point, Tavon loses control and strangles Zaniah. Judging by the nature of the injuries to her neck, it was an act of uncontrolled rage. Nia, who had joined the presentation, added, "After the murder, Tavon comes to his senses and realizes what he has done. Instead of calling the police, he decides to stage a suicide. He finds sleeping pills in Zaniah's makeup bag. We confirmed that she had a prescription and mixes them with wine. He then pours the mixture into his wife's mouth, who is already dead, and carefully lays her body down to make it look like she fell asleep after taking the pills. At around 2:15 a.m., having completed the staging, Tavon leaves the room and pretends to be heavily intoxicated. He deliberately falls in the hallway, where a security guard finds him and helps him to the neighboring room. This gives him an alibi. He claims he was too drunk to remember the events of the night. In the morning, the maid discovers Zaniah's body. At first, it looks like suicide, but a thorough investigation reveals inconsistencies. Delano turned to the audience. The evidence is irrefutable. Signs of a struggle. Tavon's DNA under the victim's fingernails, fibers from his unique suit, a post-mortem administration of a sedative, phone and surveillance camera data, and the absence of any real alcohol intoxication in the suspect. All of this points to premeditated murder followed by an attempt to cover up the crime. The prosecutor nodded. "Enough for an arrest warrant." "Excellent work, detective." After the meeting, Delano summoned Tavon Brooks for questioning. Obadiah's son arrived accompanied by a lawyer, a tall, grey-haired man with a cold stare. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for agreeing to come," Delano began, though Tavon truly had no choice. Officers with an arrest warrant were already waiting outside the door. Tavon looked composed and calm. "I will do everything I can to help with the investigation into my wife's death. Then let's start with the night of May 26th. Do you still claim that you don't remember anything after you and Zaniah went up to your room?" "Yes, detective. As I already told you, I drank too much at the reception." "Interesting." Delano opened the folder. "Because the results of your blood test taken this morning show minimal alcohol content, equivalent to 1 or 2 glasses of champagne, not enough to cause memory loss." Tavon tensed slightly, but maintained a straight face. Perhaps the alcohol had worn off by morning. In such a short time, that's unlikely. Besides, the bartender confirmed that you hardly drank anything at the reception. Tavon's lawyer spoke up. "Detective, if you have specific charges, state them. Otherwise, we will be forced to end this conversation." "All right, I'll be specific," Delano said, placing a photograph from the crime scene in front of Tavon. "Fibers from your wedding suit, a unique material made especially for you, were found under your wife's fingernails. Particles of your skin were also found there. This indicates that she struggled with you before she died." Tavon turned pale, but quickly regained his composure. "We were close before we went to sleep. That explains the fibers and skin cells. What about the bruises on her neck that match a man's fingers, and the post-mortem administration of a sleeping pill?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Delano decided to change tactics. "Mr. Brooks, we know about your wife's relationship with your father, and we know that you found out about it on your wedding day." This time, Tavon could not hide his reaction. His eyes narrowed, and his jaw clenched so tightly that his cheekbones stood out. We recovered the deleted messages from her phone. We read all of their correspondence. We know that you accessed her account at 12:25 p.m., 5 minutes before the last message from your father. Tavon remained silent, but his breathing became heavier. You found out that the woman you just made your wife had been sleeping with your father for years. That your marriage was just a cover for their relationship. That they planned to be together after your convenient divorce.
No!
Tavon slammed his fist on the table, but immediately regained his composure. I didn't know anything about this. And I didn't kill Zaniah. Then explain how you ended up in the hallway in a state of apparent intoxication, if you weren't drinking. How did the stain on your suit sleeve, which experts identified as Zaniah's blood, get there? How do you explain the fact that the sleeping pill was administered after she was already dead? The lawyer leaned toward Tavon and whispered something in his ear. Tavon nodded slowly. Detective, I will not answer any further questions without my lawyer present. As you wish. Delano slammed the folder shut. Tavon Brooks, you are under arrest for the murder of Zenaia Whitley Brooks. He signaled, and 2 officers entered the room with handcuffs. Tavon looked shocked despite his lawyer's warnings. You can't do this. You have no evidence. We have all the evidence we need, Mr. Brooks. You have the right to remain silent. While Delano was reading Tavon his rights, Nia suddenly entered the interrogation room with a tablet in her hands. Ezra, sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this, she said, handing him the tablet. The results of the additional analysis. Delano glanced at the screen, his eyebrows shooting up. Are you sure? Absolutely. The technical characteristics of the fibers don't match. It's definitely merino wool with silk, but with a different weave and dye composition. Delano turned to Tavon. It looks like we made a mistake. The fibers under the victim's fingernails aren't from your suit. Tavon straightened up. What? They're from another suit, made of a similar but not identical material. Delano and Nia exchanged glances. Who else wore a suit made of similar material at the wedding? The groom's father. Nia replied quietly. Obadiah Brooks ordered a suit from the same designer, but from a different batch of fabric. All eyes turned to Tavon, who looked completely stunned. My father. But why? At that moment, the interrogation room door opened again, and a breathless officer entered. Detective Delano. We checked the hotel cameras an hour before the newlyweds arrived at the room. You have to see this. He pointed to a recording from a surveillance camera on his tablet. It clearly showed a man in a uniform entering the presidential suite about 40 minutes before Tavon and Zaniah arrived. Despite the cap pulled down over his eyes, his face was visible when the recording was slowed down. Obadiah Brooks. Delano breathed. Tavon jumped up. My father. But why? To eliminate a rival, said Nia. We checked Zaniah's calls for the last month. She regularly spoke with a lawyer specializing in prenuptial agreements, and Delano felt they were on the verge of a breakthrough. A week before the wedding, Zaniah made changes to the prenuptial agreement. In the event of a divorce, she would receive 20% of Brooks' development, and in the event of Tavon's death, 45%. God, Tavon whispered. She was planning to get rid of me. Not exactly. Nia shook her head. Judging by her internet searches, which we recovered, she was planning to get rid of your father. Searches about business inheritance. The rights of the widow of the main shareholder. It looks like Zaniah was playing a double game. She used Obadiah to advance her career, then switched to you as a more promising partner, and Obadiah found out. Delano continued. He realized she had betrayed him, that their whole plan was a lie, and he decided to get revenge while framing his own son. Delano turned to the officers. Arrest Obadiah Brooks immediately on suspicion of murdering Zenaia Whitley Brooks. An hour later, Obadiah was brought to the station. He looked broken but maintained a fragile dignity. When he saw his son in the interrogation room, he turned pale. Tavon. Don't you dare call me son! Tavon lunged toward him, but was stopped by the officers. You slept with my wife, then killed her and framed me. Your own son, Brooks. Delano intervened, addressing Obadiah. We have surveillance footage showing you entering the presidential suite before the newlyweds arrived. We found fibers from your suit under the victim's fingernails. We know about the changes to the prenuptial agreement and Zaniah's plans. The game is over. Obadiah stared at the floor for a long moment, then slowly raised his eyes. I loved her. I truly loved her. When I found out she was using me, that she was planning to take my company, that she was cheating on me with my own son. You killed her, Tavon finished, his voice raw with anguish. Yes, Obadiah replied simply. I came to talk to beg her to change her mind, but she just laughed. She said I was old, that you were the future of the company, that she had always preferred you, and I was just a stepping stone. His voice broke. I didn't plan to kill her. I just wanted to shut her up, and then it was too late. I panicked. I slipped sleeping pills into the champagne so you wouldn't suspect anything. I staged a suicide. You ruined everything. Tavon looked at his father with eyes full of hatred and pain. My life, your life, the company, everything. Obadiah nodded. I know, and I'll pay for it. Delano signaled to the officers. Take him away and remove the handcuffs from Mr. Brooks, Gina. He's free. As Obadiah was led away, he turned back one last time. I'm sorry, son. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm sorry. Tavon turned away, unable to look at his father. Later that evening, Delano stood on the balcony of his apartment, watching the sunset over Burbank. Nia joined him. That was tough, she said. Yeah, Delano took a sip. 3 people bound by love, betrayal, and lies. And now one life is over, and the other 2 are ruined. Do you think Tavon will ever forgive his father? I don't know. Such betrayal is hard to forgive, but time heals even the deepest wounds. They stood silently, watching the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in bright orange and purple hues. Somewhere down there, people were falling in love, making promises, building plans. And Delano knew that some of those promises would be broken. Some plans would turn into nightmares, and love would sometimes turn to hate in a matter of seconds. Such was the nature of human relationships. Beautiful and terrible at the same time, and his job as a detective was to sort out the consequences when those relationships led to tragedy. The sun had finally set, and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky like tiny diamonds on black velvet. Life went on despite broken hearts and ruined lives. Tomorrow the sun would rise again, bringing a new day and new challenges. This tragic case of the Brooks family offers a stark reminder of several powerful truths. The web of lies spun by Zenaia and Obadiah, and the subsequent cover-up by Obadiah, ultimately led to the destruction of multiple lives. Honesty, however difficult, is often the only path to true peace and resolution. Zenaia's relentless ambition, unfettered by moral considerations, led her down a path of manipulation and betrayal. While ambition can drive success unchecked, it can lead to devastating consequences. Secrets, especially those involving profound betrayal, fester and poison relationships. When they inevitably surface, the damage can be irreparable, as seen in the shattered bond between Tavon and Obadiah. No matter how carefully a crime is planned or how elaborate the cover-up, the truth often finds a way to surface. Justice, though sometimes slow, often prevails. Tavon's initial reaction, driven by raw rage and betrayal, led to a violent act that destroyed his own life. While extreme emotions are human, learning to manage and process them constructively is vital. If you find yourself in a complex or deceptive situation, seek open communication, even if it is difficult. Let your personal and professional dealings be guided by integrity and honesty. Seek help for emotional distress. If you are overwhelmed by strong emotions like anger, betrayal, or grief, reach out to trusted friends, family, or professionals for support. Recognize red flags. Pay attention to inconsistencies and manipulative behaviors in relationships. Trust your instincts. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey into the complexities of human relationships and the dark corners of crime. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video, leaving a comment with your thoughts on the case, and subscribing to our channel for more true crime stories that unveil the hidden truths. Your support helps us continue to bring these narratives to light. We'll see you next time.